Okay, welcome again to another episode of Warriors Whiteboard Wednesday. Dashi Miller here from Warrior Concepts. Of course, you already know that. Online ninjaacademy.com. Running a little bit late today. There was a huge accident between my house and the dojo. And there's like this huge bottleneck. No like real detours unless I go an hour or two out of my way. So it's downside of living in the country, right? So, but anyway, right, we adapt, we overcome. Here we are. I apologize for the delay for any of you who've been waiting for, the last 12, 15 minutes for us to get started. But if you're watching the recording, that just made no sense at all. Anyway, all right, so we're going to jump right into things. So the theme for this week, as we're moving through the training here at Warrior Concepts, is energy conservation. And so if you caught Monday's podcast, right, our Kuden radio podcast, we were taking a look at this balance that we need to try to find between tension, as in how much do we actually have to put into the muscles to accomplish the task without cooking off extra energy. And we also looked at the opposite, which is, what people tend to gravitate to, which is relaxation. But how much is too relaxed, where again, now we have to pump more energy into the muscles just to get them up to speed so that we can do things, and how these things can either way slow us down. So we're looking for this happy medium, right? So we're going to continue on with the energy conservation idea, obviously within combat and survival, because the ultimate rule of survival, at least in the world of Ninjutsu, is energy conservation. And what that means is that we have a finite amount of energy that we kind of come into the situation with, and we've got to divvy that out so we're not the one that runs out. We don't run into exhaustion. We don't run into all kinds of things, right? And so we're going to continue on with this, but we're also going to take a look at specifically things that bleed off or allow energy to leak out. So we'll still talk about that tension, relaxation kind of thing, but there's some other things that I want to take a look at. And we have to recognize that this is not just a physical thing, right? Anytime that we are required to use, it doesn't matter, heavy thinking, light thinking, whatever, or we've got like this emotional stuff going on the inside, that burns off energy as well. Okay, do the research on the science, and how much we're cooking off. Even if you're just sitting in a 70-degree room doing an office job, okay, there's a certain caloric output. There's a certain amount of hydration that we lose. Okay, lose about 8 ounces of water an hour doing a desk job in a moderate, like a 70-degree imperial, right? Whatever that is, metric, but just in a room. Okay, so if we're not replacing at least that 8 ounces of water every hour, then we're backing up. Okay, so there's lots of things that can go into this. We're going to take a look at 5, and then we're going to keep on moving from there. Okay, I don't have my whiteboard all decorated like I normally do, because again, big tractor trailer. I always say their hatches were not properly battened down. They were transporting all this big long iron pipe, and straps broke, and it ended up all over the place. And 4 lanes of traffic were blocked for literally until about half an hour ago. Okay? So anyway, all right. So again, we're still looking at this relaxation and tension, but what I want to do is take a look at something that is often not addressed in the dojo, because people tend to, again, gravitate toward the physical skills and the techniques and all that. That's great. Coming to class, nice and refreshed, do an hour, do 2 hours of class, whatever, right? I know we feel kind of taxed at the end, but we're going to go home, we're going to get some rest, drink some water, we're going to get some food, whatever, and we're going to replenish that, okay? But what happens when we are required to use more than necessary in 5 minutes, 10 minutes? Okay? The average self-defense situation, statistically speaking, is over in 2 to 10 seconds. Okay, and then what? Okay, so the whole point of this energy conservation is that we can actually get in our own way. Okay. And so the quote from one of my teachers that I've been leading with all week is, and if you go to the virtual page, you'll see one there from Hatsumi Sensei and whatnot. But one that just stuck with me for years was from Shidoshi Malmstrom, and it's never be an accomplice to your own asking. Okay, so the more of these things that we can uncover that we're doing and know we need to fix, or we're doing and we don't think it matters because I'm bigger, stronger, faster, whatever, until somebody bigger, stronger, faster shows up, or it's multiple attackers or whatever, right? Or I don't even know that I'm doing it, right? Okay? So contrary to popular belief, Ninjutsu is kind of backwards from a lot of martial arts. And what I mean by that is often what we're doing is the exact opposite from what most people think of when it comes to preparing for things and whatever. So yes, we're learning things, but at a certain stage, it becomes a process of elimination, right? We start eliminating those things that are getting in the way. And this mirrors our Ninpo Mikyo, the mind science philosophy that underpins everything. For a while, you learn things that, this is what gets in the way, but this is how the world works, whatever. Not belief system. It's just, right, there's gravity, there's inertia, all this kind of stuff, right? We age, we get sick, we die. These are truths that we can battle all we want, but, we're all walking to the same place. So you do learn some things, but then later on, right, it becomes a matter of literally and figuratively, based on the practice, burning away more and more of these limitations and inhibitions that prevent us from living our best life, being our best self. Okay. All right. So what we're really looking at here is this hidden battle between mind and body, and how, like, the mind and the body aren't conspiring against this. It's prior conditioning, or it's inhibitions, or it's fear, or, again, we're going to go through a bunch of these things. But what really happens is that if we're not doing the right things at the right time, either the brain or the body can't keep up, or, as is sometimes the case, there's a glitch in the system, and one or the other, together or separately, backfires in a way that creates a problem. Okay, so again, it's about energy conservation. Energy conservation is the rule of nature, right? It doesn't matter if we're talking about warfare, right? At the end of a war, the side that has the most people, resources, money, all that kind of stuff left over, well, they're the winner. Okay, it's the way it works. Okay, so I'm gonna kind of put forward a little premise here that it, like a quote from my daughter's favorite movie. It doesn't mean what most people think it does. Right? I don't think that word means what you think it means. Anyway, so what we're going to lead off with is that the real fight is not physical. Does that mean that there isn't physical stuff going on? Yes. Okay. But the fight we're talking about is, we should not be fighting ourselves or causing our system to be doing things that is detrimental to itself. Okay. That's like an army with traitors. Okay. Or ones that are bleeding off information and secrets and stuff to the enemy. Okay. We shouldn't be doing that. Right. So again, this goes back to not being an accomplice to our own ass kicking. Right. Our job is to make him be an accomplice to his ass kicking. Our job is to make him run out of steam, run out of energy and whatnot, and end up exhausted. Okay. Without doing that ourselves, if we're making him do that and we're ending up in the same situation, this is a zero-sum game, because we have to hope that we had more to start with than he did. Okay. All right. So mastery is not in doing the moves, right? It's in understanding when, why, and how to apply them. Okay. If you're burning too much energy, you lose. Okay. If you're too relaxed, you lose. Okay. I have a quote on I don't know if I did it for Kuden or if it's on that page or where I put it, but one of the quotes from Hatsumi Sensei is that if you're fighting strength for strength, you're eventually going to lose. Okay? And so this is a matter of moving naturally. What the hell does that mean, right? People go around parroting all these words because they read it, heard it, saw it in a video, whatever. But just because you understand the language doesn't mean we understand the language of the teacher and the lesson that's being conveyed. Okay, it's we want him to end up exhausted. But the other side to this is that that the energy that's being expended, there needs to be a positive ROI. Right? I run a martial arts school. It's a professional martial arts school, which means I have rent and expenses and all that, and I'm not teaching out of my backyard or my garage. No harm to anybody that's doing that, but I want to make sure that if somebody signs up, we're going to be around long enough for them to actually get their black belt, and the place doesn't just dissolve. Which means I have to do things that run a business, which is a bad word for martial artists for some reason. So we have to make sure that we're doing things that keep the place open and alive so that we can fulfill on the promise that they hoped we could make when they signed up, which was we'll be around 3 years, 4 years, whatever from now when they're set to test for their black belt, or a year or two when they're set to test for the next black belt. Okay. So again, for 2 tenths, right, we're cooking off all this kind of energy. To relax, again, we lose that way as well. Energy conservation is more than just movement. Okay. It's about mental, emotional, and physiological survival. Okay? So again, every mistake, right, everything that we do, doesn't matter. Every thought, I'm speaking here, every action that we make and muscles contract and those kind of things, right, drains a bit of that energy. But more than that, every mistake that we make drains our ability to react and survive. Okay. So as a part of that, 2 armies battling and who wins the war and all that, what it ultimately comes down to is the one who makes the least amount of mistakes at, the wrong time and just wins more battles and stuff. That they can get the resources where they need to go. They can conserve things as they need to, right? The beans, the bullets, other resources and whatnot have to get where they're going. Okay? History and recent history is rife with, entire armies freezing to death or starving to death or whatever because they just couldn't they put too far away from home and they couldn't get the right resources to them, right? So I know that sounds like it's completely different from martial arts or survival training, but it's not. Macrocosm, microcosm, it's the same, okay? All right, so let's dive into this, right? We're going to take a look at, we're just going to call this part 1, right? And let's pick a color. Let's do blue, okay? So what we're going to look at is 5 energy leaks. 5 energy leaks, right? Not leaks like L-E-E-K-S, not the vegetable, okay? Leaks, right? Drains, right? Like, here's what I want you to think about. In martial arts, combat, survival, whatever, when we think about leaking or we think about bleeding out, we think about literal blood, okay? But we're also losing the water and the hydration that keeps the cells operating well. We're also bleeding out and leaking energy that we need to keep the metabolism up, to keep things going, right? It's another reason why you want to keep that self-defense situation as short as possible, okay? It's not like these, people have commented online, right? I'm old, fat, bald, whatever, right? I couldn't last several 2-minute or 5-minute rounds in a competition. Agreed. Not here to argue, which is why I don't do that shit, okay? If things last that long, again, what was the statistic I gave you originally, right? Most self-defense situations are over in 2 to 10 seconds, okay? The longer it lasts after that, shit starts going away, right? We have glycogen stores in our muscles that allow for that quick burst of speed. If you watch competitive fights, you'll see a flurry of stuff whether it's ground fighting or standing or whatever. And then there's this circling and stalking and whatnot. And then somebody will do their thing and, it comes together again, right? Well, those glycogen stores, every time we fire the muscle for a quick burst, we're burning it out. We only have 7 to 11 seconds worth of glycogen in the muscles. And then we need a 7 to 11 second counter cycle for the body to put that back. Now, shit, that's problematic. Okay? What if he attacks during that? Okay? So, whole other class for some other time. I usually tie it in with ground fighting, but grappling, anything like that, right? We want to match our spikes in glycogen stores, right, when they're replenished, and we can go to his depletion. See, that's scientific fighting. It's not just nose to nose and just, what's that thing? FAMO, right? Flub around and find out, that kind of thing, right? A lot of people play that game because they make this assumption that they're just always going to be the better one because they chose the better martial art, or they chose the better fight style, or they won all these fights before. Okay, but were you dealing with weapons? Were you dealing with multiple attackers? Right? Were you dealing with some other things that sport fighters never ever have to worry about, and so therefore don't train for? Okay. All right. So these things are the 5 we're going to cover here. Right? Are the things that sabotage. We use words that hopefully are strong enough. They sabotage. I'll use the term fighter, but I'm not talking about people that are just, that kind of thing, right? Self-defense, survivalists, and whatnot, because they don't manage their resources. Right? We need to think like a general who's manning an army, right? But instead of having a general and a literal army, what we have is a general and an army. Okay? So 5 energy leaks that sabotage us, right? 1, holding our breath. If you don't keep the oxygen flowing, right, holding our breath does 2 things, not just one, right? 1, it deprives us of oxygen intake, which the muscles, the organs, the brain need to keep functioning, right? And the other thing it does is it holds on to the negative waste gases that the body's metabolic processes produce. And so we end up getting oversaturated with carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, all kinds of things that eventually just make us go, Sensei, I'm getting sleepy. Okay. So again, we have to be careful because when tension increases, breathing stops. Right? So, and when breathing stops, then the brain gets less oxygen. Okay. Covered that. A brain starved of oxygen leads to poor decision making. So this isn't just about how well the machine is working. It's also, we start making dumbass mistakes and we can go into panic mode and things like that, right? But it also leads to delayed reactions and muscle fatigue, okay? Because we're just, lactic acid builds up in the muscles, cramping can occur, all kinds of shit, right? Okay? So the fix for this kind of thing, right, is instead of holding tension, we use strategic breathing rhythms. Okay, one of the most basic that my students get in the very beginning is we exhale when we're doing work. So when I'm applying a technique, could be a strike, could be a kick, on the application, I'm exhaling because that's when the body's going to be tensing up to not buckle when it lands, right? So what I want to do is kind of counter this, right? And so I want to exhale when the body's doing work, as opposed to the primitive caveman wiring we were born with, which is to hold our breath when we do work. Okay? And I want to inhale during movement that's not taxing, right? Or that's a preparatory move kind of thing, right? So we're going to exhale, inhale, right? Okay, so. Right? So it's harder to hear the inhaling thing, but that's what's going on, right? Because we want to keep the breathing going, right? But again, we've got to counter that primitive caveman kind of thing that's going on, right? And it's just a really, really good place to start. Now, are there other breathing rhythms that we could use? Absolutely. There's a cleansing breath that I give my students, which is, we kind of tie things to the Godai. So for those of you who don't believe the Godai is official within Ninjutsu or whatever, that's fine, right? We use it as a way to classify things because it comes out of our Ninpo Mikyo, a way to classify things to make it easier to remember. Okay? So you're not trying to remember just a list of minutia, right? So cleansing breath, just what it sounds, right? It comes from the water element. And so water-type breathing tends to be long in and fast out because the water element is associated with power, okay? Power generation and release, right? So we're talking about the kind of movement like a baseball pitcher or a cricket baller would have, or like an ocean wave kind of thing, right? Draws back and then just crashes in. But it's also cleansing, it's also clarity, a bunch of other things. So if we realize, right, we're moving around and we realize we were not mindful and the tension's building up, right? We can feel our chest, we can feel like the breathing has gone shallow and whatnot. We can feel muscles getting tense. What we can do is, and this is where the leaping or rolling or whatever comes in, we want to put a little extra distance between us and them, reset the fight to 0 so they have to close in again, right? Just make them have to restart. But that gives us some needed time to do some cleansing breaths, which hypersaturate with oxygen, right? And then force this extra stuff out, right? There's this power. So, right? And when we push it out, just relax. Just gotta move things around a little bit, almost like you're shaking off that energy. Sorry about that. My wife gave us a robot vacuum cleaner here, and apparently it decided now's a good time. It's not. So anyway, so holding our breath, that becomes problematic, right? Next one is the mind trying to make sense out of the chaos, right? So I'm going to call this using logic, right? Like using left brain logic. So when I say the brain, I'm talking about the side that we think we're smart with and we use all the time, okay? As opposed to the side that should be active in an actual situation. So we're using left brain logic to make sense out of chaos, okay? And we discussed this quite a bit in the dojo. As a matter of fact, this subject came up a long time ago. One of my students just retired from training. I'm going to miss him. He's dealing with some health issues and whatnot. He's now 80, 81, something like that. Started when he was 45. And anyway, I'm not going to have a moment. Anyway, so we had a discussion a long time ago where we were discussing these kata and whatnot, and he had a common misunderstanding that a lot of people have, whether they're on the one side of training that kata suck, man, you can't do that in a fight. You're right, okay? That's not the point of kata. And the other side, which is people that actually believe that the kata is everything and they're going to be able to reproduce these in a fight. That's the person I'm talking about here, okay? They think they're going to be able to do this thing. And so what I said was, what you don't understand is that everything that we're dealing with is principles and concepts, right? Strategies and tactics and those kind of things. The kata are these pure examples, right? Made up by past masters who could already do this shit. And so they constructed these things to show you the system at different levels, right? Like how basics can be strung together in a logical way so that your body can go between defense and offense and control itself, control the bubble, that kind of thing, right? But one of the big things here is that a kata is a strategic tactical example of how to think, move, and respond to what he's doing in a way that helps you learn how to make sense out of the chaos, okay? So, but in the martial arts world, there tends to be this divide. And you can have the kata camp, but then they do sparring, right, to make up for this thing, because, you know, you can't do the kata, so they're going to do sparring. Except, is it only me, or does anybody else notice that the sparring doesn't look anything like the fucking kata stuff, right? I mean, like most people, I just had a new guy start less than 6 months ago, right? He agrees with all that stuff, but there's still this remnant kind of thing. And And the discussion he and I were having is that why is it that somebody learns this entire system and then through the process of sparring or application or whatever, they do what everybody else does and they just kind of reduce it to 2 or 3 strikes that they like, 2 or 3 kicks that they like, a grappling move or 5 that they like or whatever. And then the rest of it just gets kind of tossed into the freaking dumpster. Like, we're never going to need those. Okay? It's because we're always thinking about this mano-a-mano sport kind of thing, or the 2 thugs going at it on the street or whatever, as opposed to what if it's a fucking drive-by? Don't be careful that you're getting rid of your leaping and your rolling too soon, or I'm never going to need those break fall bullshit. I got my rank, I'm done. Really? Yeah, well, you can do a sitting break fall, drop flat to the ground underneath that spray that's coming across to hose you down. Again, one type of thing, right? But what ends up happening is people get caught up. So this is on the one side, okay? This is on the one side, okay? Where we're trying to use left brain logic to make up for, to make sense of this chaos, right? So, and I think most of us get this, right? The moment you try to figure things out, the moment you try to second guess him, right? In an attack scenario, you're already behind, right? You're already behind, right? So, and it's not just because you're behind because this is some kind of ninjutsu ideology, or as some people like to say, it's this inside out backwards ninjutsu BS or whatever, right? No, it's because left brain thinking and describing things to yourself literally slows you down, right? He's just moving and whatnot, right? And we're going to be busy narrating to ourselves, okay? It doesn't work that way, right? So overthinking also burns mental energy. The more the brain is processing and trying to solve a problem, instead of just living in the moment and experiencing and adapting to whatever's going on, that going with the flow kind of thing, right? Cooks off more calories, cooks off more energy, okay? Burns more of the sugars that the brain uses to operate with as well, okay? So it's just like unnecessary movement in the body, right? Burns physical energy. It's the same thing, right? Energy is energy, right? The fix here is instead of analyzing, we want to train our attention to prioritize threats, right? So, and we want to do that automatically, right? We want to have this automatic response. And I don't mean this hair trigger flinch response, like this guy pops his shoulder and we automatically punch him in the face. Okay. Well, first of all, if I'm close enough to punch him in the face without moving, okay, then he's close enough to punch me instead of try to do a little psych out with the shoulder. So I've made a bad life decision by allowing myself to be in range. Okay. So that's already fucked up. And every time we get hit and damaged, drains energy out. Okay. Not the same way it does in a video game, but it's the same thing. Because now that organ's not functioning as well, or that injured muscle is contracting, right, to protect itself, protect other parts of the body and whatnot, and we're just cooking off a shit ton of energy, okay? So we want to be careful with this, all right? So again, everything we're dealing with here is about prioritizing threats. So matter of fact, that is the focus of this Friday's training, where we're gonna try to eliminate a bunch of excess mental energy by overthinking or by getting caught up and confused and those kind of things. We'll talk about some more here as we go along, right? But by learning what is important to pay attention to in any given moment, we don't have to try to guess. We don't have to try to figure it out, okay? So that kind of gets in the way, right? So holding our breath, that doesn't just leak energy, it prevents, it's like one army destroying the bridges and the roads so that the supplies can't get through to their enemy. Okay. So holding our breath, we're not getting the oxygen in, but we're also not expelling things. Right. That's like soldiers being so terrified that instead of just wetting themselves or whatever, they don't void things. Okay. All right. Number three is self-doubt and second guessing. Self-doubt, second guessing. Okay. Again, naming no names. But I have heard many people in this art, in self-defense classes, in just over time, right, saying that they learned all this stuff, they got this belt, they got this certification or whatever, but they know how they are under stress, and they're just afraid they're not going to remember anything. Or they're afraid they won't know what to do next. Well, if you're that way now, trust me, when he's scaring the shit out of you and you can't remember your name, phone number, who you're married to, whatever, okay, it just goes downhill from there. But I'm just going to pick one out of the mix. A bunch of years ago, right? There was somebody that was fairly high ranking in this art, right? And they actually had a communication method. I can't remember if it was on we didn't have blogs then. What we had forums and that kind of stuff, right? And they actually admitted that if they couldn't start using a specific movement or a specific setup, they were completely lost. Oh shit. Okay. Now, could self-doubt be an issue? Yeah, because he could end up being ginormous, right? What about second guessing? Yeah, right. But if we don't have a fix for it, right? And a lot of people, we talk about certain problems that can creep up, right? Shit ain't gonna happen to me. He does that to me, man. I'm just gonna. Okay, it's kind of like the people that sit around the table or in the living room or whatever and talk shit about like political problems and whatnot. If I were king of the world, right, I would do this, this, and this. That motherfucker wouldn't, right? That kind of stuff, right? Well, it's easy to be wise when we're not in the thing, and most people don't understand the depth of the problems that are being dealt with, and that includes not just the average individual. That includes people that are in the self-defense and martial arts world. Most of them have never been in an actual attack. They've never been in a war or a battle. They've never been on the receiving end or having to deal with violent people like myself and a handful of people throughout the art, right? So they come at this with a deficit. A lot of instructors, right? People are trusting their lives to people who, yes, they know the moves, they know the techniques, they can pass those things on, but they have no idea what it's like inside that bubble. Right? There's a lot of guessing going on, a lot of assumptions going on. It becomes very problematic. Okay, so, but when we're talking about self-doubt, we're talking about second guessing. What we're talking about is hesitation. Right? Every hesitation costs us time. Right? Creates a delay. There's reaction time, that kind of thing. Right? Every time we doubt ourselves. Right? Every time we do this, right, our body delays movement. Okay? This is an energy conservation failure. Okay? Because our mental energy is spent battling ourselves instead of reacting to what he's doing. Okay? That hesitation, right? One of the first hesitation moves my students have to get over is, we'll teach them the kamae evasion and whatnot up front, and they get some techniques and whatnot, but first part of what I would call our one-step sparring is they have to get really good at no matter what their partner throws at them. And we start slowly and then build up to their litmus test is 80% full speed and they're hitting their mark, proper kamae or within the range of what's okay, right? 8 out of 10 times. At a given speed, then we bump up the speed. We hit 80% full speed, they're still there, great. Now we can move on to the next thing, which is kamae evasion with uke nagashi or uke uchi, okay? But one of the big problems they run into with this hesitation is I'll say maybe during a test or a review or something like that, I'll say, okay, partner's going to throw whatever they want, okay? And if they're brand new people, I'll say it's coming from a certain side, punch, grab, or kick or whatever. Or as they go up, it could be anything. So partner's going to throw something, right? You're going to shift to kamae and then identify something while you're on the move that you can access right away. You're going to be an opportunist, right? But what ends up happening is they shift and then they see that they're not sure what they're looking at because there's not a kata to guide them, right? Nobody told me what to do, sensei, not even a kata, right? Or they get over here and they see 2 or 3 And then they don't know which one is best, which one's official, which one does our style say we should go for, which one is an actual Q show. Fucking hit something. Okay? Everybody, there's a whole bunch of other things that go on in here. This holding on to left brain logic and whatnot, right? This starts in a freaking dojo where people are so worried about what the hell is official and what's right because they're worried about the purist slamming them online or whatever. Trust me, people have said more to me than, right? It doesn't stop me because they're not living my life, right? I don't give a shit what they believe, right? I follow the same teacher and a bunch of other ones, okay? So we are where we are, okay? So again, this is an energy conservation failure because again, this is about allocating energy where it needs to go. When it's time to move, the muscles need to get the energy, right? If we're trying to decide, okay, where's the energy, which angle do I move to, or move into the freaking space, get away from that thing, okay? It doesn't take a doctorate or a rocket scientist to know which freaking, to just move out of the way. Okay, well, what if I move out of the way and leave something open? Well, then you did, fix it on the next one. Can't do anything about it at that point. Energy needs to go here. Now, if I'm farther away and he's still moving in, me dancing around like a freaking rabbit on crack, that's a waste of energy as well, because I should be paying attention to how he's moving, what his clothing, how his clothing might help or hinder his ability to do whatever he does. Does his footwear match the ground surface and whatnot, or what can I exploit, right? What can I use? So if I'm over here dancing around or rolling or doing, all this bullshit you see people doing, then I'm cooking off a shit ton of energy here, but I'm not applying it here. Okay? A couple of classes ago, or one of these ago, we discussed the role in different types of meditation and how they fit certain ranges from here where we're having a class, right, to out of range, right? Because meditation matches and trains mental functions. And then getting close to that kukan, we need to be able to turn that off and go to Zen mind, right? So these are they're not tricks, they're devices, they're tactics to know, right, where should certain mental functions be on, which ones should be using the energy, which ones should not, because they're just going to get in the way. Which parts of the body should be moving, which parts should be relaxing. That goes back to those energy spikes I talked about with grappling and wrestling with somebody. We want ours to be, our upscale to be matching their trough where they need to reload. And when we need to reload, right, he can be honest, but I need to relax everything that's not involved in protecting myself against those moves. People don't do that, right? Because they don't have a framework behind it that goes with the moves. Everybody's focusing on the freaking moves, but these skills, these will determine how much gas you have in the tank and how long the car can go before you're sitting on the side of the road or you drive off a cliff, right? So the fix for this self-doubt and second guessing is pre-decision, right? Through mental scripting, right? If A happens, right, I do B, right? If it's a straight line shot, I'm moving left or right, right? Depending on the space I have, because that's another A or B, right? Am I shifting to flatten myself out, or am I moving, back this way? Am I moving what angle? That's why we have 8 directions that we could possibly move from, right? But, right? And that's also why upper, intermediate, and advanced students need to be researching other fight styles. Not that they're going to do it that way, but if you don't know what the hell could be coming at you, then you got mathematical martial arts. The defense against the punch is, or my favorite way to deal with a punch, well, nobody gives a shit. Okay? And he hopes that you have a favorite. So his trick works. Okay? All right. So, but if we have this pre-planned kind of thing, right, then we don't have to expend the extra. We've got a plan of action. Right? And this is not the same as following a kata. This is circular movement is the answer to straight line attacks. Circular attacks, I want to move straight because there's a hole, there's a bubble that I can exploit that he doesn't have any cover in there for, right? If he's a kicker and right, what kind of kick? How is it coming? Those kind of things, right? So we train through different different ways to handle things. Okay, guy's moving around this way, right? I'm gonna beating the shit out of his arms and whatnot, right? Which you can't do in a sport match because we're both wearing gloves. It doesn't work. So when we do something and there's a video and stuff and people go, oh, shit don't work in a fight. Yeah, well, one, did you ever try it? Okay, so if they say, no, I'd never do that bullshit, well, then I don't have a discussion about the way that the engine of my car works with my 5-year-old grandson. I'm certainly not having a conversation about deep level strategic and tactical thinking with somebody who is like a one-hit wonder. Okay, it doesn't work that way. Okay, but without it, right? Remember what I said, every time pain happens, we start shutting down those muscles' ability to operate. So even if he has tons of energy to dump into them, they're not responding because they're not functioning properly. Right? That's a whole other thing. Right? So what do we have here? Holding breath, using left brain logic to make sense out of chaos, which is experiential. Right? We're trying to chase things around. Right? That reminds me of one of the most common symbols in the East for describing an unenlightened mind. Right? The picture is a tree full of chattering monkeys. Right? They're screaming, they're shitting on the ground, they're jumping from limb to limb. That's what our minds do. Whatever thought comes along, we just chase it, and then another one comes along, and then we chase. Right? As opposed to just watching that happening, as opposed to chasing individual things. Okay? Inside ourselves, outside, it doesn't matter. Okay. All right. Number 4. Right. The urge to fight. Right. The urge to fight a predetermined way. Okay. So this is technique over context. Okay. Technique over context. So let's see. We have to fight the official way. We have to fight a predetermined way. We have to always do what we always do because it's our preference and it's how I lead off. It's like that one person that said, if I can't start this particular way, then I'm completely lost or whatever. Okay. So again, it can be everything from having favorites to being worried that I'm not doing it the official way, whatever. Okay. So the point here is that a rigid plan dies the moment reality doesn't match your expectations. And there's a hard, fast rule in warfare. And I can't remember if it was General Patton or who said it, but no plan survives first contact with the enemy. Okay? So if we are struggling to figure things out, right? Which technique, what time, or whatever, that's up here. This one, I'm not struggling to figure anything out. I'm just going to do what I do. And then, that's that. This is the fight style of being willing to take one to get one. What you're really playing is caveman fighting because you're hoping that your skull can take more or your body can take more than his can, right? We're back to being a contest again. Survival's not a fucking contest. It's a zero-sum game. You either survive or you don't. This isn't you get to talk smack afterwards and request a rematch. Some shit you should never want a rematch for. But that's just me speaking from experience. Okay? So if you force yourself to execute a technique because that's what you train to do, right? That's the official thing, right? Then you're going to burn energy against resistance instead of adapting. So instead of just kind of going with whatever's happening and prioritizing things, we're going to be running into resistance. We're going to be trying to do a technique that he's resisting. It's not working, man. Freaking get it up and do the thing that is working, right? These things start to play into these other classes that we've done, right? The technique, right? The technique it should be in context, right? Which is why the models are just that. They're examples. Okay? They're ways to learn things and keep things in a safe, structured way so that you can go through the left brain learning. But then we need to integrate that stuff so that we know by feel. by experience when a mushadori is working, when I have a ganseki or when I need to turn it into, I go from ganseki nage to ganseki otoshi or ganseki ori, or that just all changes because I'm in too deep and I've got to do jigoku otoshi, different lineages, right? So we have these names for reference points, but when Hatsumi Sensei says you need to like throw away the technique, what he's talking about is stop holding on to these freaking names as this is the way to do it. We need to get to a point where we understand what the hell, what constitutes or what elements are necessary for a throw or a drop or whatever. Okay, so how does this throw or does this technique properly applied? What does it feel like to me, to him? So when I'm the uke, I'm not the dipshit who's just kind of going along for the ride. Okay, it's I'm waiting for my turn. It is your turn. It's your turn to feel what the technique is doing to your body so that later on when we are countering those techniques and escaping from them and reversing them, you don't have to play catch up. Okay? So the fix to this side here is training principles over techniques. Okay? Yes, you learn the model. All the master teachers in Japan start you with the model because if you can't do that, then we can't direct your mind to principles in action, right? So if we throw away the models too soon and we think we understand the principles and concepts, which are fucking invisible unless you have a model or something, an example to see how it works, well, then you can't see it, okay? So principle over techniques, right? So technique serves the situation, not the other way around, okay? The technique is chosen based on my strategy, right? The outcome I need. The tactics that are employed allow me to control things so that a range of techniques that'll play that out kind of thing. But nobody needs to be worrying about that until they're if you're in my curriculum, like Nidan going to Sandan, if you're in the general Bujinkan stuff, as it was when Hatsumi Sensei was running it, I understand that things are about to be changing and people are not going to be happy because they'll actually be held to standards. When Hatsumi Sensei was putting people through and we were kind of, I was listening back and forth the way he was describing things. Our second Dan stuff is what he expects for people at the 8th, 9th Dan level. Okay, so that doesn't mean our people are accelerated. It's just, right? I'm worried about this stuff. Right? So anyway, but up to Nidan, right? People should just be worried about adapting to whatever's going on, being an opportunist, and having a tool in their toolbox that fits that particular thing that's going on. All right. So let's do one more here. Right. And this is a huge energy bleed. Not that the other ones are not. Okay. But this is the fear of failure. This is fear. Okay. Fear of what? Fear of failure. Fear of injury. What else do I have in there? Fear of getting hit. Okay. Let me allay that fear. We'll just do this one. Let me just allay the fear of getting hit. Okay, you're gonna get hit. Okay, it's a fucking fight. It's an attack. You're probably gonna get hit a couple of times before you even realize you're in one. Okay, this isn't like bowing in and then we're both in the game. Sport, martial art, dojo, whatever. Okay, if he's any good at being a freaking mugger or an attacker or whatever, he's not yelling at you from across the street. Yo, shithead, 2 minutes, I'm coming. Not doing that, right? So chances are you either get grabbed or you might have been stabbed once or twice, whatever. Your job is not to not get hit, kicked, stabbed, whatever. Sorry if that busts any bubbles. Your job is to not let that shit happen to you enough that the TV gets turned off, okay? So you're going to get hit, right? Get over it, okay? If you train for perfection and you believe you're going to be invincible, the first shot that hits you, a whole bunch of this shit's going to start leaking. Okay? Anxiety's going to pick up. All kinds of things are going to happen because, how could that have happened? Right? Because it's a freaking fight. It's a survival situation. That's how. Okay? So, just to go down a couple of these things, fear burns energy before the fight even starts, before you have to actually even move, before your body starts getting damaged. and you bleed it off way faster because the adrenals just kick in, right? So if you're afraid of being hit, you're going to overreact, right? You're going to shift back too far, right? Or you're going to freeze up. Remember, it's people like to call it the fight or flight mechanism. It's not fight or flight. It's fight, flight, or freeze. You ever see somebody freeze up in terror? Right? They don't just go catatonic. Right? They may not be moving, but their body is freaking vibrating. The energy is going everywhere, and it's not being directed somewhere. Right? So fear leads to flinching. It leads to hesitation. It leads to panic breathing, right? Which can lead to hyperventilation, which means it's another way to take a little nappy nap, right? Which all drain energy really, really, really freaking fast. Okay? So the fix for this one is controlled exposure, right? One, accept that getting hit is a part of the process. Okay? Losing balance, feeling pressure, that kind of stuff, right? So we need to train with those elements. Right? And I had a student, was it last night? This is Wednesday, Tuesday. Yeah, last night, right? Went through this training and everything, and I always ask my students at the end of every class, what did you learn? I need for them to hear what they learned, and it gives me a chance to help reframe things or add a little something to it just in case. Like I'm not a fan of somebody telling me I have to stop doing XYZ. That's not helpful, because the more you think about having to not do that thing, you're thinking about, the brain doesn't think of the negative. So you have to think about doing it before you can think about not doing it. Well, see, overthinking. Well, shit. Now what? Okay. But the goal isn't to not do that. The goal is to do the proper movement. So instead of framing things in your head, whether I'm asking you or not, instead of framing it, I need to stop the thing I don't want to be doing, but I'm going to think about it extra, right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to reframe it as I need to focus on the flow and continuing to keep my body moving, right? Staying in motion, so I'm harder to hit, or whatever the flow is. So it's easier to body in motion stays in motion, right? So those kind of things. So I want to frame it based on the goal and the outcome that I want, not the thing that I want to stop doing, because I'm just gonna. When I'm moving around and I think about, okay, don't stop. Right? My body's, if it doesn't come to a dead stop, it's severely slowed down because don't stop. Right? Yeah, don't stop getting hit. How about that? Okay. So if you train under pressure, your energy will be spent reacting and not panicking. Okay. And that's what we want. We want response. I don't even like using the word reacting a lot, but reacting is fine for a lot of folks. React, respond, right? It's this panic, this herky-jerky kind of movement kind of thing that's based on tension and trying to move during that kind of time, right? So what we have is holding breath, using left brain logic to try to make sense out of the chaos, right? Instead of watching the action, right? There's things that you can do with the way you use your eyes so that you're seeing the whole space and you're using a part of your brain that focuses in on and highlights movement and shape as opposed to detail. Detail is in another part of our brain that requires more processing time. It slows us down. Okay, so there's all kinds of things we could do. Right now, I'm just focusing on the energy thing. Okay, all right. So that's one. All right, let's do part two quickly here. Okay, so part two. All right. So we're looking at here is the strategy of energy conservation. Okay. The strategy of energy conservation. Okay. So we're going to take a look at a three-step framework for strategic energy use in combat. All right. So the concept here is survival is this return on investment thing. I started talking about this earlier with running a dojo and all that kind of stuff, right? If the return on investment, right, what I spend in advertising, time, that kind of stuff, isn't the same as I would be getting if I had a real job. People like to say this isn't a real job, saving people's lives and being an educator, not a real life. Okay. Anyway, then backing up. hurt myself. Okay. What I should have is a return on investment that is at least the same, which is break even, but preferably greater, so that should other calamities occur, there's a slush fund to be able to help with that. I know people don't like business people and they don't like rich people and all that kind of stuff. And what's he need all that money for? I'll give you, for instance, that he needs all that money for fucking lawsuits, because everybody thinks he's rich. Well, I'll just sue him. Then I don't have to work and I can get free money. So now he needs to pay for lawyers. And if he settles out of court because he just doesn't need the freaking hassle, yeah, that's why he needs extra money sitting around that everybody thinks, well, he doesn't need. Yeah, he does. The more success you get, whether it's money, attention, whatever, right? The vultures just fucking come out of the woodwork. Okay? Go find anybody on YouTube that has a successful channel and go down through the comments, right? And you'll find the vultures really fast. Okay? Because everybody is on your side while you're the little guy trying to get there. But as soon as you get there, watch their comments change. Okay? So anyway, right? Survival is a return on investment game. Okay? I covered this during Kuden. Keep talking about it, whatnot, right? In nature. Okay? If we're in a wilderness survival situation, right? And if I'm expending more energy to collect the food that's going to keep me alive, or the water that's going to keep me hydrated, right? Or whatever it is, right? If I expend more energy to collect that, process it, and digest it, then it gives me in energy units, I'm going to die. Okay? Just because I know certain skills, which is why my students get a broad range of skills, right? At least 5 for every skill set they get. 5 different ways to light a fire, 5 different water collection methods, 5 different water purification methods, that kind of stuff, because it's context, right? It's context. All right. So again, it goes back to the same thing. Every thought, every move, every breath either increases your survival or drains your resources. This is true not just in martial arts and combat. This is true in life. Every expenditure, every agreement to help somebody, I'm not saying these things are bad, but you have a finite amount of energy. You have a finite amount of resources, even the wealthy. Okay? Do stupid long enough, you die. Okay? Financially, it's called bankruptcy. Relationship, it's called divorce, or worse, right? Jail time, whatever, right? Or they just fucking poison you in your sleep. Anyway, so I know it's pretty dark, right? But I don't think people think about this nearly deeply enough, right? Show me some moves so I can have just enough so when something happens, what the hell? Right? It's context. Okay? So, and then the less you spend, the more you can use when it matters. Again, not just a martial arts idea, a life idea. Okay? So let's take a look at this 3-step framework. Okay? We're going to keep this really, really simple. Are there other things that you could do? Yes, but we're going to kiss it, right? Keep it simple, Shinobi, right? I bet you thought I was going to say stupid. I would never say stupid unless something was really stupid, okay? So want to keep it simple, right? 1, breathe first, move second, react third, okay? So this is not 1, 2, 3 this way. This is number 1, okay? Breathe, okay? Yes, breathe, okay? What happened there? Oh, yeah. Breathe, move, react. What the hell does that mean? Is it the moving, reacting? Okay. If you hold your breath, you waste movement. Okay. You're not replenishing things. Okay. Breathing gives oxygen. Oxygen fuels decision making. Decision making controls movement. Okay. The reaction we're talking about here is that emotional response that's outward, right? Mental kind of stuff, and assessment. Okay. Save that for after I duck the bullet or the fist or the knife or whatever. Okay. People often get caught up, and you'll hear people, well, maybe you won't. I'm an ex-cop, right? In the thick of a situation, right? Somebody will be frozen stiff. And this is their mantra. Why? What's happening? I don't know what's happening. Well, somebody tell me what to do. Because they're reacting to that, but they're not putting themselves in a better place. Breathe, God damn it, breathe. Okay? That rapid fire, this is just all, if you're talking, you're exhaling. That's the way it works. Very difficult to talk, inhaling. You can do it, but it doesn't work so well. Okay? So again, breathe, move, react. Right? Number 2, right? Don't force techniques. Okay? Don't force techniques. Use what's available. I know you guys have all heard this stuff before. Now I'm singing to the choir, except how often do we do it? Okay? Use what's available. There's a secret. I think it's in the scrolls of the Tagagi Yoshinryu for always having the right technique at the right time. Okay? Without violating any of these. Like trying to make sense out of it and doing the official techniques and whatnot, right? I'm sure you'd like to know what that is, and I'll share it with you. Okay? I'm paraphrasing. However, the secret to always having the right technique at the right time is to never do a technique that's not already working. It's already happening. You feel it. You catch it in progress. So you use what he gives you. You use what is happening. You learn to fit in instead of swim upstream. Because, I got to win a certain way. So bragging rights. Okay? Again, we're not executing formal moves, right? We're adapting strategies to real-time threats. So we develop strategies in the dojo, and we get really, really good at carrying these things out, but we develop multiple ones because we don't know what the situation is going to look like. But those strategies should not be concrete. Okay? I'll give you, for instance, this. And for those who like to collect kata, they're missing a huge piece. In the Shodan no Maki of the Koto school, there is a packet of 3 or 4 kata. Okay? We have 3 in our Mod 2 program. So a student's second 6 months in training. Okay? And those kata, I think the 4th one that we don't have in our curriculum is called Hida, maybe. Okay? But the other ones, of course, they're in my head because we do them all the time. Shiaku, Tangeki, and Kyogi. Right? If people are just collecting kata, they don't see the connection. Because in the scrolls, there's packets of kata that are doing the same thing. Same principle, same concept, same fight strategy, just looks different. Okay? Those 3 kata I just named. Shiaku, Tangeki, and Kyogi. I think they're in that order, but again, I could be wrong. I don't care. 2 punches, and then there's this thing that you do before you do a follow-up. Okay? What they boil down to is after the 2 punches, which is the kata's way of showing you that the first one, you weren't in the right place. Even if you had something, you weren't at the right distance. Your body wasn't set to best exploit that kind of thing. Or you just missed your mark altogether. And so after the second one, you do. But it's not about 1 or 2 or whatever. A whole other class. Okay? It's when I move, the first thing I do is I distract or in some way. It could be mental, physical, whatever. It's a quick surprise. Okay? In one of them, you attack high, and then you initially attack high, and then you follow up mid, I think, right? In another one, you attack low, so I stomp on his toes or the bones of his foot, and then I attack mid or high, okay? And the other one, I'm counter, do something to set him up mid, and then go high or low, okay? Because the strategy is to move their head around in the fight so they never know where the next one is coming. Because if we're both fighting this way, to him, unless I'm moving or he's moving in a way that signals that a kick might be happening, or he's doing that little bouncing thing that spells a certain type of fighter, right? Fight's up here, right? But if he throws that punch and I tag that, so his brain's still recognizing, maybe you never saw that before, but yep, fight's still up here. And then all of a sudden, I pop him in the koi, right? This hip joint right here. Where's his head go? Where's his brain go? Right here. Okay? The body, unconsciously, goes to cover that. And then now that all of his defenses are there, I'm going to attack high or I'm going to go low or whatever. I'm not going in after that same thing again. The other one distracts high, and kick his hip joint out, that kind of thing. So what we're learning to do is move his head around his conscious about where the fight is and what level it's on. But if we're just collecting kata, so learn to fit in, right? Well, which one do I do? Well, where the fuck is he open for that first move? Okay? If his guard's in the way, guess what? Don't go there. But that's why all the lineages give you options for the same freaking strategy. Same freaking strategy. Okay? Number 3, mental scripts replace hesitation. Mental scripts. Plan strategic responses. And I don't mean if he throws a punch, I'm going to do ooch, and then I'm going to, or he throws that, I'm going to do Ichimon's. No. Okay? Job 1, control the distance, stay out of range so you can't be sucker punched by a jab or caught by a speed kick, right? Control the kukan, right? When things come in, move to avoid in a way that keeps your targets closed and you're attempting to open up his, okay? Exploit weaknesses, those kind of things, right? So you're learning what to watch for instead of trying to run this freaking dialogue in your head. The script is, if he's this kind of fighter, right? I'm about to release a kind of a guide that helps Bujinkan Ninjutsu students match. And again, it's a general start for people at advanced levels, but to match the strategies, tactics, and approaches of the different lineages to certain fighter types. Okay? Because that's strategic thinking, right? The cool thing is this isn't just at one level, it's a hybrid synthesis of the lineages. And so when people say, I train Bujinkan, I'm okay with that, okay? Timing, distancing, angling, flow, all these common principles across. But there comes a point where we've got to transcend that and really dive into the different lineages, not because of favorites, but what were these things freaking designed for? And then recognize that there are options. And in this case, for this guide, it's options for certain fighter types. But if I'm talking about different environmental setups, more space, less space between two parked cars where the doors are right here. See, now I'm gonna pick a lineage based on its use of that space. Are weapons involved? What type? Those kind of things. Right? But knowing more allows me to, if this strategy is not working, I can switch to a completely different strategy. I'm not just going to throw shit at the wall and try something else because I can't make a dividing line. Right? So anyway, so mental scripts replace hesitation, right? And so here's what we're talking about. If you pre-decide how you're going to react, if you know what's important, right? So students when they first come in, they get our 8 phases of strategic self-defense response, right? So the strategy. So that's at 8 phases, right? General awareness, situational awareness, escaping to safety, distraction tactics, dissuasion tactics, physical defense, post incident recovery in whatever form that takes, and dealing with the legal system. Okay, so they get that, so they get to see that self-defense is more than just show me some moves, learn me something. Okay, mod 2, they get the framework, the primary framework that fits into phase 6, which is physical defense. So they get the 5 Ds: discern, defend, disrupt, deliver, discern. Right, and what we're doing at each of those things. They're not steps; they're phases that a situation goes through, and not linearly. They could go back and forth, knowing where I am at any given point. So that's a mental script, right? To know where I am. And I learn it to the point where I don't have to remember it. I learn it to the point where I can feel where I am. And if I know where I am, I know what I'm supposed to look for. I know what my priorities are, and I know what I need to do to get this to transition to the next phase, right? Just like summer rolling into fall, into winter, okay? So same thing, right? So again, if somebody grabs me from behind, right, what I want to do is I want to apply pressure and tension where, let's say it's a bear hug or whatever, right? I want to keep them from crushing and inhibiting my breathing, okay? And I want to maintain stability, but everything else that's not involved or necessary for that response in the moment, I'm going to relax because I need to conserve energy. If I tense everything in my attempt to get out, then everything's going to be fucking drained when I might have an opportunity. Okay? This is about fighting smarter, not harder. Okay? We're all in ninjutsu for that reason. I don't know that people are actually focusing on that. Okay. All right. Very quickly here. Right. So real world application and what's next, that kind of thing. It's part 3. So let's do this. Right. So part 3. I know I ran out of space. Part 3. Very quickly here. Right. Real world application. Okay. So here's a real world survival test. Okay. If you had to fight for your life, not for a fucking trophy, not for a belt, not for bragging rights, not for the girl on Saturday night, or girls for the guy on Saturday, or the girls for the whatever. Okay, you do you. Okay, so if you had to do that right now, where would you waste most of your energy? Would it be on breath holding? Would it be on overthinking? Would it be on overreacting? Would it be trying to force a specific technique that's your favorite? Or would it be fear of failure, fear of getting hit, those kind of things? Where would the energy bleed? If you don't know where the bleeding is, you can't put a fucking Band-Aid on it. YouTube's going to kick me off at some point because when I get heated about this stuff, the 4-letter expletives just start to drop out. Okay, so the point is that your energy should go where it matters most. Okay. Okay. Decision making. That's not send your friend a direct message. Decision making. Okay. Movement efficiency. Right. Not about me. Right. Movement efficiency. All right. And threat prioritization. TP, threat prioritization, not toilet paper. Okay, so keep doing this thing. It's way over an hour. I promise myself. Anyway, right. So this now sets the stage for the Friday class. Okay, for the Friday training. Anybody wants to jump in on that? Okay, so there's the URL. But what we'll be doing on Friday is we're going to be focusing on one of these. Okay, because we can't do all of them in a 75 to 90-minute class. Just not possible. But in the process of focusing on one, it's going to highlight some other things for students so my class theme is one thing. Individually, students will figure out their priority, right? And then hopefully that'll turn into questions like, I keep holding my breath. How do I just stop holding my breath? Reduce the pressure and slow the hell down. But you said slow training. I said it serves its purpose at certain points in training. But once you're decent there and you can manage that, you jack up the speed a little bit or the pressure a little bit or both a little bit so that there's that risk of it coming back. And then what you're doing is not familiarizing, you're desensitizing yourself. Okay? There's no way a little kid that's first learning how to catch is going to put a baseball mitt on and catch a 95-mile-an-hour fastball as though he's the catcher with a pitcher throwing this thing at him. Okay? That's freaking ludicrous. But people have dumbass reasons for training, right? But we don't see baseball players or cricket players or whatever, right, throwing a ball, nice, spongy and soft and all that, at the same speed that mom or dad or grandma or grandpa might throw that ball, so that when little Bobby catches it and it bounces around and off his face and stuff like that, it doesn't fucking kill him, right? We don't watch sport teams play at that speed, but I'm still watching a shit ton of people avoid pressure testing. And I don't mean all out just friggin' because some people pressure test straight to sparring. Well, that doesn't help because at a certain speed, you're going to be yelling at your students or you're going to be frustrated with yourself because all your habits keep coming out and you're not doing the new stuff. Well, no shit. Because they're not in muscle memory enough. They're not in deep-seated consciousness yet enough. There's a whole freaking process to this. Okay? So we're going to be focusing on threat prioritization. Knowing what the hell to look for. If I know what to look for, I stop looking at everything else, right? If I have this framework and I know what I should be paying attention to at this phase, at this distance, at this, his limbs in a certain, right? Is it cover? Is it exploiting a weakness? Is it, right? If I know what that is, stress level drops. Right? We can't possibly think that we're going to handle multiple attackers if we can't do this to a single person. Because multiple attackers are fucking moving all over the place. And I'm still controlling. I need to know what the priority is. Like, number one, don't let the guys on the flank get beside you, because beside you is behind you. Okay? Keep them funneled. Right? Using one or more against the other ones. Right? So skill sets very, very different. Okay? So prioritization, we're doing this so that we can eliminate some of these right off the bat because we're prioritizing. Okay? And then we'll use some proven principles to help further focus, drop tension, stop making so many of these mistakes, right? That can cost us more than most of us are willing to lose, or most of us are willing to pay. I don't know about you, but I'm not dying over some shitbag. Okay? My job, like Patton said, my job is not to die for my country. My job is to make the other poor son of a bitch die for his. Okay? So my job is not to do as much as possible, as fast as possible, and all that, and hope that I can beat him before I run out of energy, or that I get exhausted after he does. Nope. My job is to do things in a smart way so that he gets exhausted and I'm still good to go. I have to be in a 1-to-1. I have to have more energy here because I don't know if this isn't going to turn into another assault. Or if I can't do it against one person, how the hell am I going to manage my finite energy reserves against 2 or 3 or what? That's all Togakure stuff. Okay, so I want to think about this, right? Hopefully I've given you enough that you can just dump it into your own training and start to just focus on things. If you want more of the like physical examples, drills, other discussion points and whatnot, then get signed up for this thing. It's $9 for a 75 to 90 minute class. You get the recording, whether you can make it or not, you're still getting the training, that kind of stuff. And it'll make this more visible, make it make more sense, right? But even if you don't make it, I've given you plenty, right? And hopefully it serves you well, okay? If not, it's not my fault, because it works for me, it works for Soke, it works. Right? So anyway, that's it. I will talk to everybody again next time. So be safe, train hard, and if you have any questions, post them in the comments. I'll try to answer them as quickly as I can. All right? Take care.